Next session, it's a panel discussion, breakthrough marketing strategies that convert. To moderate the session is my friend Andrea Wasserman. I don't know how many of you read her Captain Customer. It's a weekly blog email that has some interesting observations on what's happening in retail. I encourage you to check that out. So Andrea, I think, is a good person to be moderating this session and really kind of surface some of these breakthrough strategies that convert. She has a good eye for it through her years of retail industry experience, first as an equity analyst and then in digital leadership roles at companies like Nordstrom, Soul Society, Hudson's Bay, and Nine West.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. We're running a few minutes late, so we will skip right through introductions since you can see who everyone is, and Scott gave a brief one, and we will get started since I know you're here to learn a lot about marketing today, and our panelists are very well positioned to tell us all about it. So to start off, we'll go right down the line, and just tell us what's really working well for you in the world of marketing right now in your organizations, please.
I guess I'm the first one in line. So I'm Charlie, by the way. That's my picture. For us, we spent the last session was actually a great lead-in.
Yes,
for us.
really good lead-in.
We spent a lot of time and money getting better at attribution, right? And so the stack, if you think of it from a reverse perspective, maybe you start with Google Analytics, and then you invest in DCM, and then you invest in a DMP, right? And then you invest in third-party cookies or whatever. So that was something that, particularly for the Toomey brand, is a big deal, right? Because it's more of a considered purchase, and it takes a while to get from point A to point Q or whatever the sale actually happens at. And so, for us, understanding that attribution has been key. And I would argue that for anyone in this room that's in the premium space, it's probably the most important place you could invest in marketing.
I guess I'm next. So I'm Sarah Dorsett. I would say from Century 21 Department Store, by the way. Not real estate, so just clarifying that in case you were wondering. So for us, I would say that taking an extremely surgical, I loved the last presentation, by the way, because I agree, it was a great lead-in. Taking a very, very surgical approach at our digital marketing. So I also oversee marketing for the organization in total, and so that's a kind of a different animal. But our digital marketing program has done very, very well because of that approach. And what has really worked for us has been creating basically a 30-30-30 split with our natural direct traffic, our email strategy, and our paid. So what we've been able to do by doing those three things is, and again, very surgical approach to all three of those areas, is to spend less unpaid by focusing more on the other two channels and bringing them up so that they make up more of the total, both in traffic and in sales, so that when those start to take a little bit of a dip, we can ramp up more in paid, or we have some dollars there to ramp up. But it also allows us to test things in paid because we can rely on those other channels a bit more, and those other channels are less expensive.
Hi, I'm Louis, founder and CEO of Pebble Post. We're a little different here because we're not the brand. We're a marketing services platform that works with a couple of the brands, well, actually, all three in some level on the panel. One of the things I think we've learned that we've seen, because what we do is take the real-time online activity and dynamically render physical direct mail into home, is you said 30-30-30. We think about something as 90-90-90. 90% of intent activity is now available online, and 90% of meaningful purchase decisions still happen at home. So how are you going to reach that person in the situation where they are? Thinking about that, not just digital for the sake of digital. And then 90% of purchases happen within a 10-mile radius of home at physical retail. So we look at it as the messaging going truly cross-channel, but also cross-situation for the consumer. And it's extremely powerful in the results. And we actually just published a case study with Toomey today. We have some outside, but it's been eye-opening for us, taking digital marketing into home, and then from home they can go in-store, online, mail order, telephone order, 100% purchase channel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Stafford from Lisa. I don't know who this handsome fellow is.
Something. I was about to say, you don't look a thing like that guy.
This is not a wig. I just want to start with...
I was trying to look at the face and figure out whether maybe it was the same.
This wig is a strategy that converts.
Amazing.
So look for
You
my
have a
picture later.
stand-in on our slide.
That's right. So I suppose going last is always a little bit dangerous here. I'm actually going to come at this a little bit differently. I'm going to talk about sort of organizationally how we think about this and what works. And for me, one of the real things that we focus on is we're very much, it was interesting the mid-funnel reference earlier, we're very much mid-funnel focused. We're in a large industry, it's a considered purchase, maybe like luggage is as well. And so we really chase that mid-funnel customer. We do that through partners like Pebble Post, which is great. But organizationally, we're really setting ourselves up for what I would call performance marketing. We focus less on building a brand, and we're really what we call sort of transactional brand building. So it's a slightly different take from sort of tactics maybe, but hiring the right people who have that sort of cadence and trading mentality. There is a lot of great tools and techniques out there, but I think that's just one thing that we've really focused on. Make sure we've got the right people in the team who are really focused on that mid-funnel down. So.
That's great, thank you. So as Charlie mentioned, the session before this was all about attribution, and it was really got into the levels of different types of attribution, why it's important not to just think about Google Analytics or one attribution source, but really to look, from the top of the funnel all the way down to figure out what's working and the new tools that exist for doing that. So all that goes to say that we can attribute much, much more today than we could 3, 5, certainly 10 years ago. But there are still some places where there's a gray area, could be a little bit fuzzy. So what I want to ask each of the panelists is there something that you're doing that you're actually not 100% sure that it works, that you haven't been able to attribute the heck out of, but there's still a reason to do it? And will you admit...
speaking at conferences?
Yeah, exactly. And will you admit to... Will you admit to doing it and tell us, what that is and why it's important, even though it's a little fuzzy? Sarah, do you want to start? You are really specific about kind of those buckets.
I know, I'm very specific. Oh my gosh. Frankly, based on the last presentation, I think it's sort of easy to say that it's hard to actually figure out what is working. So the hardest thing for us has been really, we know we need to have a media mix, of course, but I don't think we always know what the exact KPIs should be. I think sometimes we actually learn what the right ones should be after we get started. So we expect one thing, and then we learn something else by keeping an open mind overall. But I think you really need to find a balance with those KPIs. I think you need to understand how each touch point hits a customer and when they'll actually be able to make a purchase. I know, and I think our prep call, we talked a little bit about keeping your message out there, hitting that customer. But when do they actually decide, okay, now I'm ready, now I can make that purchase? So for us, I can't tell you exactly, I can't say anything is absolutely working 100% and always will, and I'm going to go after it. I would say that most of what we do is kind of a combination of things, and we're just building on that.
So I'll jump in. We wound up with a kind of different or additional perspective, I should say, on that, because I think it's really hard in digital, having been in digital 20 years. When you're looking at a cookie and it's anonymous, you have to follow clickstream traffic or you get lost, right? You lose the signal, you have no idea what happened. When you're actually taking clickstream traffic and converting it into a name and address and then to a household key, you actually then can match to a transaction file wherever a transaction happened, right? So if somebody bought on desktop web, mobile web, in-app, whether it's Safari or an iPhone device, all the way through a mail order, telephone order, or in store, where they use anything but traceless tender, you can actually match back attribution from the most important point, which is a conversion, a transaction. It's given us a very different perspective on how things are affected, because you can push out marketing cross-channel or omni-channel, pushing it out, trying to attribute what the reaction was. But when you go blind, losing the signal through to a transaction, it's kind of, it made us look at the omni-channel should be the purchase channel input, right, as the result of it, not necessarily just the marketing push going out. It's just a different totally different way that we look at it, and we tie it back from the transaction match file from the merchants.
So I think for us, we, in terms of the blend of our marketing, we actually like the TV route to market as a channel, which might sound a little surprising.
Nick,
but
are you pure play? Do you have any offline?
we have one pop-up store in
Okay.
New York, which I'd encourage you to visit.
Walked into that one.
I have. It's great.
Yeah, it's near your store, I think, actually. So, yeah. Sorry. So TV for us is important. I think it's a good mechanism to demonstrate the product. But as far as do we like it and can we measure it, I think at the end of the day, we can see immediacy from a TV airing. For those of you who buy TV time, and you can see that immediacy. Well, obviously, what is much harder to track is immediacy of purchase, and then the lifetime value, not lifetime value, but the purchase sort of propensity of that customer. But we know it works, but we know it works on an aggregate level. I think there are some people out there that do a great job of trying to attribute that, like iSpot TV, but it doesn't quite close the loop there. So sometimes we have to look at it on an aggregate level, and we're comfortable doing that, and we're comfortable with that performance too.
And one follow-up there. So when you think about opening more stores, whether, and I don't know, maybe that's a hypothetical question, but how do you think about that, given that you have one and there are some obvious benefits, but hard to measure?
Well, I mean, in many ways, a store is actually easier to measure in many ways. Foot traffic, conversion, data capture at that point. I don't think it's giving too much away to say that we're not aggressively looking at that channel. But I think the economics of where we operate, direct to market, direct online, are great. I think sometimes you can get across more of the story in an online environment as well. You can certainly get across more around reviews and how others are thinking about our product. And in a market where you look to others for confirmation of what you're thinking of doing, I think sometimes that's actually best achieved online. So we're at 99% today, and I think we'll probably stay that way.
I keep thinking how funny it would be if that actually is Nick Stafford and you're just some guy and somehow like stumble up on the stage.
It's pretending to be from Lisa.
Now we need to know who that guy
Or
is.
like this is some advanced attribution marketing test and you thought a handsome dude would get more people here. So I have a boatload. I frequently refer to myself, and it's true, I'm a colorblind statistician. So I'm like the absolute zero of a brand marketer, just completely incapable. But I find this question to be a real test of self-awareness, because we all like do location shoots, right? Which, how hard is it to find a beautiful beach? Do you really have to go to Costa Rica? I just don't know. I don't buy it. Store windows. Toomey has a policy that all of our store windows around the country are the same for brand efficacy. Is that the right decision? I sort of doubt it. And we try to challenge the status quo. I'll give you guys a pretty cool example. So there's a company out there that has robotic hands that hold a Pilot G2 pen, which is like the finest gel pen on the face of the earth. And it writes thank you notes for you that are handwritten. And so you can basically send people handwritten thank you notes at scale, right? So to me, we have our total, we're part of the Samsung umbrella. We have about $1 billion in digital revenue. Theoretically, we could send every single person a thank you note. And when this idea was brought to me, I'm like, I know what we'll do. We'll send it to half the first-time orders, half the repeat orders for 6 months, and then wait and see if it has an effect on lifetime value. How come we don't think about that from a brick-and-mortar context? Like, how hard would it be to kind of like slaughter the sacred cow of brand efficacy and test dynamic windows, right? Like, so luggage, are the travel patterns of a New Yorker the same as a Californian? Therefore, they should have the same thing in the window. I don't know. And if you were a brand marketer and you said, I want to go to Costa Rica, go, cool, like shoot half in Costa Rica and shoot half at the Rockaways. This is not hard, but I just think that it's hard for us to get out of our own way for what is traditional, and you can probably save a boatload of money. We just did one, we had videos on the site, and it was just some guy, like Nick Stafford, that would come up and say like, hi, I'm so-and-so from Toomey, and here's this. I'm like, well, what if we got rid of the guy and just did text over the video? Would that have a negative effect? And actually had a positive effect. So I think that there's a bunch of stuff that we do that drive all of us a little crazy, and it's just a matter of asking the question, like, how do you actually test whether or not it's worth doing? So yeah, I think my answer is mostly everything.
And you're not bitter because maybe you weren't invited to the Costa Rica beach shoot?
Well, yeah, I mean, I like surfing, you know? It sucks.
So I'm going to pick up on what you just said, Charlie, which is, there are some things that we do and maybe we're a little bit bitter about it. So on the flip side, so we've talked about kind of what we do that we think works, but we're not really sure, and we do it. I know personally I've also always had those things that you can see really do work and you kind of secretly wish they didn't because either you don't love them or you don't think they're the perfect thing for the brand. But at the end of the day, we also have to drive sales and it's working on some level. So it makes you cringe, but you still do it. So why don't you start since you kind of alluded to that a little bit.
I got a good
and
one
let
on
us
this
know
one.
what those are.
The three-legged sweepstakes. And the three-legged sweepstakes is, I've never seen it fail, and it makes me feel
Tell us
so
what that
dirty.
is.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
So I was an advisor. I'll tell a real story. I was an advisor to a company that did activewear, and we reached out to, so activewear, this brand is one leg, I'll say it, it was Outdoor Voices. So Outdoor Voices was one leg, ClassPass was another leg, and the Skim was another leg, right? And it's just like, hey, skimmers, hey, ClassPassers, hey, Outdoor Voicers, enter to win a $1,000 shopping street or store in Austin, and you get a free year of ClassPass, and you'll be in the Skim, right, or whatever it is. And then everybody enters their email address, and you generate 80,000 emails. Now, those emails suck, right? They're not like as good as the one you got, but Outdoor Voices is something really smart. They basically, let's just say the cheapest item, and I'm making these numbers up, but the point is where the efficacy is. So you have a $50 item. That's the cheapest item on your whole store, and you make 60% margins, right? That means you got about $30, put shipping, returns, all that. So you got about $20 to play with. Outdoor Voice is like, hey, here's a $20 gift card to every single person that entered, just as our thank you, right? So they basically have a break-even, can't-fail CPA. I've never seen that not work, and it really makes me feel dirty, right? And so when we're a premium brand, like Toomey, we just did one with us, Le Creuset, and Blackberry Farm, which is arguably like the nicest luxury resort in the United States. And the impetus is, well, does somebody who buys a $400 ceramic Dutch oven buy a $600 piece of luggage? Not too much of a stretch. So is there a way to share customer base in a privacy policy agnostic way? It works really well. And I've just never seen it not work, and I sort of wish it didn't.
It's a great one. Sarah?
Well, I've been in department store retail for a long time. And the department store I worked for before this one. So I would say that probably everybody in this room can guess what my answer would be, and it is promotions. Promotions always work. And the reason why one of the reasons why I came to Century 21 to work was they were completely non-promotional. For a department store, no promotions. Absolutely not. Wasn't going to happen. My job was going to be really hard, and it was going to be really fun, and I wasn't going to have to rely on that magic bullet that always worked. And then we started doing some promotions. So a little bit of a failure there, but I'm trying to back out of them. So I'm not saying that I don't believe they make me cringe, I'll say that. Do I need them? Absolutely. Do I use them? Yes. But I do believe in, and I have found online as a testing ground for them. One thing that's very successful is, once again, and I'll use that word surgical a lot, is to be surgical about how you do promotions. You can actually test into promotions in a very small way without doing those broad blanket promotions that we all sort of love to do just because, hey, it's Memorial Day, it's Labor Day, everyone's going to run one. If you're not in it, nobody's going to look at you, no one's going to see you. So we've got to do it. For me, what we found is when we do those surgical, those test promotions, those smaller things, when we reward people or incentivize people because of who they are, what we know about them, attribution, we find that it doesn't impact our bottom line the way those big promotions do, and we learn a lot more from them. We learn the right way to do promotions. So for me, yes, I can always run a promotion to boost my sales, but I do cringe every time.
So for me, it's broader around just retargeting, and every marketer in this room is also a consumer, and I think we forget that, and we forget about the respect or disrespect of what's happening to a consumer, right? Before I started Pebble Post, I built the largest portfolio of retargeters as founding a venture fund. I led Fetchback, Chango, Tapad, Sail Through, Movable Ink, Mass Relevance, iStock at 33 Across, blah, blah, blah. Used to be I would say those and people would be like, wow, those are really cool companies. Now they hear them and they're like, oh, you're the fucking guy, right? And it's like, Ooh, I mean, truth. Like a consumer should need a restraining order for 6 weeks to look at a pair of socks, and that's what it's gotten to, right? It's so abusive, it's so invasive, disrupting the user experience. Yes, you get the efficacy is falling, so the industry's focused too much on efficiency. When efficacy falls, well, let's do more to make up for it with tonnage. That's crazy. There's a consumer at the end of this, and your brand is in front of it. Yes, it works. You might get the ROAS you need, but at what expense, right? To what you're doing to people, or what publishers are doing to people, stealing their experience and stealing their time. So that's mine, and after building it, now I get to answer for it.
I think as consumers, everybody can really relate to what you're saying. As marketers, do you have any tips for how we can all better use those retargeting tactics, or more respectfully use them? Since, as you pointed out, they do work.
Yeah, the hardest part, the two hardest parts are the end result of where the publisher is flighting it and what they're doing and trying to take control over that, so it's not really disrupting the user. The marketer has to put their foot down on that. The brand has to, and that's hard to do. But the second part, which is really a lot of the reason so much is rolling up to Facebook and Google, it's not just because they're big. It's not just because of other things I think the market thinks. It's because they care for the user experience a lot more. There's no fraud. The consumer's in a situation predisposed to take action when they're consuming a search result. That makes it prime, right? What are the odds you're in a situation predisposed to take action when those socks are chasing you around on your mobile device in the back of an Uber or whatever else you're doing? Like almost zero, right? The second one outside of publisher for the user experience, I think, is data and privacy, right? The Pandora's box of what's been opened, from ambient listening on phones to devices, all the way through your TVs and home, right? That's out of hand. But how does a brand actually help police and do that? That's hard, right? Because once the data is uploaded through exchanges, you can't really avoid it, right?
And there is an empirical way to think about this. Shocking that I'm talking about that, but is that there's a click-through rate graph in your frequency cap that looks something like this, right? And the question is like, where is right here? So the first time they see it, your click-through rate's 0.5, 0.4, 0.3, 0.2, 0.15, blah, 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 blah. And eventually you get to this asymptotal level where people stop clicking on your ads. So have your frequency cap right there. Like, seriously, people, this is the easiest thing. It'll save you money. It's not going to cost you anything, and your customers will like you more. It's just the effort level needed and the data validation needed to understand where that asymptote is. And so if you don't know where that is, you're doing your customers and your marketing budget a disservice. So I think there is a way to do it with empirics as well. Sorry, Nick.
Does anyone else think that Charlie's got lighter hair than in his photo?
All right, look, man, it's summer.
Just saying.
I'm just glad I don't have a picture.
I've never met Charlie before, and I'll probably never meet him again.
I'm going to burn your one store down.
So
That for attribution.
Oh, yes. I'll know who it was, yeah. All right, so someone who uses all three of these tactics that were mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about influencers. So I think that's another thing that we sort of learn to love. And the way I think about this, it's almost like picking a bunch of stocks. And as an amateur, you don't really know what you're getting. And so you really have to look at it as a blend. On an aggregate basis, it works for us. Things that make me cringe are signing the invoices for, Joe Blog Esquire, who's got 1 million, Instagram followers, etc. So I think you have to go in that open-minded, keep an eye on that portfolio, and yes, you just have to grit your teeth when you sign those invoices.
Can you talk a
really
little bit
good one.
about, very little about your influencer strategy? Because it seems like a category where it's, it takes a lot to believe that somebody just happened to just buy a new mattress, as opposed to the blogger that can show a different pair of shoes every day, for example. So how do you think about that in like a bigger purchase category?
Well, I think for us, there's an element of looking at customer segments when we think about that. And certainly we want to sort of have the right blend of segments. And then we think geographically as well. So there's definitely some sort of thematic element to cities emerging. So we were talking earlier outside around LA, for example. So we do think about it geographically. Do we want to activate a market? We can target accordingly. Do we want to activate certain categories, certain age groups, certain moments in life? Certainly a purchase like ours is a very considered purchase. You don't just suddenly wake up one morning and think, I'm going to buy a mattress. You probably got, you're moving into a new home, maybe you got promoted, maybe you're celebrating a pregnancy, etc. These are all life moments that drive this purchase. So we try to tap into those as well. And that's proved effective for us.
And our last question is just asking each panelist to give the audience one really tactical recommendation for marketing conversion that you can take back to the office today and really start to work on. We know that that's something that people are often after. So Nick, why don't you start? And whether it's influencer marketing or something else, what's a recommendation that everybody can learn from Lisa?
Make sure they get your photo in advance for a conference. So
It's like the gift that keeps on giving.
we got 5 minutes left.
Like
We can do it. So I think mine comes back down to sort of tactics. I'm not going to go for a marketing tool. I'm going to go again to the organization side. So I would say that if you're a retailer e-commerce business, I would say that as long as your brand design and brand messaging foundations are in place, you've really got to act like a day trader in my mind. So at Lisa, we follow orders every hour, every day. I can hear my phone going when the orders are coming in. And I would encourage you to create an organization that is very, very focused on that, because you can lose a day very quickly and sometimes it's hard to catch it up in the month. So certainly that's what we do. We very much focus on performance marketing. And that's in a business where we have a broader mission. So we're a B certified corporation. We run a number of social impact programs. We donate one mattress for every 10 that we sell to organizations and individuals in need. So it doesn't need to be counter to other things that you do in your business, and I would just keep that cadence up. So that's where I would focus.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned organizational structure and what's needed to support that. Question for the audience: how many of you in your jobs today have an organizational structure around you that's even slightly different from when you took the job? Yeah, I kind of suspected that. So we're not going to have time for a question that I wanted to ask kind of about organizational structure. But it's obviously a hot topic now as retail organizations shift so much. So if any of your tactical recommendations, do apply to org structure, I'm sure that would be useful to the group. Louis, do you want to take the next one? I know you have a different setup being more B2B, but maybe I'm sure you've seen something across companies that the audience can learn from too.
Yeah, definitely. And firstly, happy to say 3 months ago I bought 3 Lisa mattresses for myself and my kids, and before we got that great sleep, we were all bald. So thank you very much. It really does work.
This is influencer marketing right there.
And
unpaid.
And apparently for everybody here who likes highlights in their hair, if you buy luggage, it gets lighter too. So those are 2 really good tactical takeaways. We have to come up with one for sure.
Oh no, I have a black and white
I'm so
picture.
glad I'm not involved in this.
No, mine's black and white.
Okay, moving on to Sarah.
I think honestly the biggest tactical thing that we've seen learning across now several hundred brands is really digging into, I think programmatic has kind of spoiled us in digital with the efficiency of workflow automation, but at the expense of efficacy really at the end of the line. And what I mean by that is going back to your transaction files. And think about old school retail. A lot of it was built on it when it was catalogers reaching across the country like Sears. It was incredibly innovative, right? And it shattered a lot of traditional retail. I think we've gotten too far away from that, and especially digital, and probably because cookies don't translate easily into who somebody is. They translate into what was done on a device and browser. And I feel like the marketers that we've worked with that have really dug in deep, cross-purchase channels, looking at transaction files, matching things back, they've gotten much more efficient on the ratio of impressions served versus conversions happening, right? And that's critical, especially when you think of the abuse or respect to a consumer, right? All of digital is 0.01% of all impressions served result in a purchase. Would anybody here in their right mind spend money if they really thought about 0.01% of your dollars spent actually result in a purchase. I doubt it, right? So I feel like we all need to tactically keep that in mind across all channels.
Okay, so I already mentioned being surgical. I already mentioned always having a mix. So if I were to give you a really tactical thing to take away, the one thing I have learned this year and sort of training my team actually on doing this is don't be afraid to change partners. This might be a controversial topic, but we revisit who we're part. We have a small team, so from a team organizational structure, we keep our team very small, very tight, very smart group, and we work with partners because they have access to all the data. So we have vendor partnerships, but we are always assessing them. We evaluate them all the time. We throw hard questions at them. We ask for strategic help. We throw them tests. And we're not afraid to change, and we know how to ramp up quickly. So if we have to change a partner every 18 months because the technology has gotten better and somebody has built something better, we will test it. We will do it. We're not afraid. We're not intimidated by the idea that, oh my gosh, we have to make a shift. We have to move all this data over. We have to ramp up again. Our team is actually built to do that so that we can try to take advantage of new opportunities, cost savings, new efficiencies, new technology, because it just changes so fast. I would say try to structure your organization to be able to do that.
I'm going to get a little Machiavellian on you at 10:40 on a Thursday. Your partners don't have the same incentives you do, right? So Google, one of my friends, a guy named Ian Laurie, once said to me that Google is the cute little tiger cub that will grow up and maul you and eat you. So stress test your branded keywords, right? So because the fundamental that if you bid 0.01 cent higher and you have the same quality score, I'm sorry, it's fundamentally bullshit. Right, and we proved it at Toomey. So when I get to Toomey, I bet you half the people in this room, you have your branded keyword set at $15 max CPC. You're happy, you're in average position 1, and you're like, oh, that's cool. The auction will just pay. We started at 15, brought it to 7, brought it to 6, brought it to 5, brought it to 4, brought it to 3, brought it to 2, brought it to 1. Average position stayed at 1.0, and our CPC started going down. Okay, so it is a fundamental truth that auction is not 100% aligned. And you get to have a nebulous definition, right? Because it's based on quality score and it's based on your tech stat. It's all just a smokescreen. They're not on your side. Stress test your bids. Do it today. They're not on your side. They just want your money. They're not on your side.
If
not on your side.
being mauled by Google is not a pleasant way to end, I do apologize. But that's certainly fit our criteria for tactical recommendations. So we will wrap it up here. And thanks very much to everyone.